Okay. There is a moment in every life when you decide to rise, to stand taller than your fear, to speak louder than your doubt, to chase the vision that sets your soul on fire. This is that moment. And here, we walk it together with stories that awaken, voices that inspire, and truths that set you free. This is Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, where hope has a voice, and that voice is yours. And welcome to another episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald and Brichelle. She's right there. Hey, Brichelle, how you doing today? You had a great weekend, I understand.
I did. And as we were talking before this, it really was full of a lot of mindfulness because I had to keep myself on track with what was going on in my mind so that I could manage what was going on in my heart at the same time, just a little bit easier. So today we have a reoccurring guest, and I would love to introduce him. We have Ryan Gottfredson back here with us today. If you want to go visit his website, and you didn't do that before, it is ryangottfredson.com. And how are you, Ryan? It is such a pleasure to have you back.
Oh, yeah. So great to be back. I mean, it must have been something right if I got invited back. So thanks for having me. Or you might be really desperate. I don't know. But I'll take the former as opposed to the latter.
Well, you should, because we ain't desperate. I got to tell you, we've got the show is doing extraordinarily well, and people want to be on because we have a good time and we enjoy talking to people like you, because you're working to help humanity do a better job with executives and with individuals and stuff. And mindfulness is a major component of what you do, isn't it?
Well, it is. So, and I would say more broadly, in a way, like self-awareness is kind of what I do. And I think mindfulness is a part of that. And one of the things that I focus on quite a bit with people is their mindsets, right? So, Kevin, I see you visually, right? You're wearing glasses, right? And all of us, we're all wearing our own unique glasses. And our glasses, for most of us, are glasses that we're not conscious of, but dictate almost everything that we see. And because they dictate what we see, also how we interpret our world, and then how we respond to our world. And so what I've found through my research as a professor at Cal State Fullerton, also as a consultant, is that our mindsets are the most foundational aspect of everything that we do. Yet most people aren't aware of the current quality of their mindsets. So the reality is, everybody, if we were to line people up, like, I don't know, think 100 people, we could theoretically kind of rank them from mindsets that are less optimal to mindsets that are more optimal. But what's interesting, if we were to do that, like we could figure that out. But if we were to ask those 100 people, do you have good and high quality mindsets? I think everybody would say yes, even though there's a range in terms of the quality of their mindset. So mindsets is something that most people aren't aware of in themselves. And so when I work with people, a big part is helping them to become aware of their mindsets so that they can better understand who they are, how they navigate their world. And overall, when we do that, we become a more mindful being.
Well, and I got to mention this because I'm looking forward to introducing these folks. And there are 25 people in Kenya that are sitting into a big screen TV watching us do the show. And Brichelle, would you like to read what Samuel says?
Yes. Hello, Samuel. Hello, everybody. He says, greetings, Brother Kevin and Sister Brichelle. Happy new week. Watching you live from Kibera slums, Nairobi, Kenya. Say hi to our guest, Ryan. Receive greetings from my team of 25 sitting and listening to this favorite program. And we love you, Samuel. Thank you for joining us in. And he is amazing. Ryan is so good. If you didn't listen to the last one, make sure you keep us on for the full hour.
And you might want to have distribute some paper and pencils so that people can take notes, because this is going to be very impactful for everyone, I think. So, and Ryan, isn't it cool that you've got an audience in Kenya now?
So cool. In fact, I'm as this is happening, I recently read a book. It's called Born to Run. And I'm spacing the individual's name off the top of my head, and I'm spacing where he's from in Africa. But he was a kid who grew up in Africa, unfortunately, because of pretty terrible things that happened, ended up in a refugee camp, essentially as an orphan, and was as an orphan in this refugee camp, he was able to work for a gentleman on a neighboring farm who had a TV, probably like the only TV in the area, and they got to go watch the Olympic Games. And this kid got inspired, and ultimately, like, I want to do this someday. Ultimately, through some pretty remarkable experiences, ended up getting adopted by a family in the United States, and ended up ultimately running in the Olympic Games as an adult. And incredible story to just think that, seeing that planted a seed. And so I just hope that maybe what we talk about will plant a seed that will change somebody's life. Who knows?
And I probably couldn't pronounce his name anyway, but I bet he's from Ethiopia.
I don't remember. I'd have to look it up. But Born to Run, it's an awesome book.
So, and it's interesting because a lot of us don't think about what we're capable of. And if we think that we're capable of something, we oftentimes get told that we can't do it.
Yep.
And it's important for all of us to realize that you can do stuff, can't you?
Well, that's your mindset, right?
Yep.
It's right. So I think a lot of people talk about mindsets as our attitude towards something. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that because it can be that way. But what I've actually learned through my research is that our mindsets are actually deeper than just our attitude towards something. They're actually, we could dive into the neuroscience, and it's actually the wiring in our brain. Right? Let me give you an example of this. How would you say that most people respond to or how do most people see failure? Something to avoid or something to approach?
It's always something to avoid.
Right? Why do we avoid failure?
Because everybody tells us that we got to be better than that, and if we fail, life is terrible suddenly.
Right?
I think.
Yeah. So when we fail, right, we feel bad, right? We feel uncomfortable. We're worried about how other people might see us. Maybe they'll see us as being less competent, for example. And we get really worried about not failing. But that's only one way to view failure, right? Yeah. We could see failure as something to avoid, and that's a self-protection strategy. But we could also see failure as an opportunity to learn and grow. In fact, it may be our best opportunity to learn and grow. I imagine, Kevin and Brichelle, you would agree with me. I've learned more from my failures than any of my successes.
Yep.
Ryan, if I could tell a personal story, when I was doing the show in 2003 and I had to give it up, and I mentioned to some folks, yeah, I failed. And they said, no, you did fail. You went for it. You did everything that you could to make it go. And people I wasn't, because in my mind I failed, but a lot of people were very up to enthusiastic about the fact that I was willing to take a chance. And sometimes when you take a chance through circumstance or whatever, you don't have the success initially. It's like there's a band that I grew up with called the Beatles, and they were an overnight success. That right. They spent 10 years in working to develop their craft before they became an overnight success.
Yeah.
And they failed a lot. That's okay.
Yeah. So it's really helpful for us to kind of recognize that there's different types of challenges that we could face. Okay. And they're different levels. There's what I'm going to call comfort zone challenges. There's performance zone challenges, and there's learning zone challenges. So comfort zone challenges are challenges that we don't immediately kind of have the answer to, but we know we can get it. Let me give you an example. Rochelle, can I put you on the spot?
Go ahead.
Okay, what's 12 times 12?
Imagine I couldn't answer that.
144. Any other
yep.
questions?
144. Okay, you got it. Now let me give you another one. What's 12 times 14?
160. No, 180. I don't know.
Yeah, it takes us a little bit, right? Which is fine, right? Most of us learn that 12 times, we memorize the multiplication tables up until 12 times 12. Most people know right off the top of the head, that's 144.
144.
If we say what's 12 times 14 or what's 13 times 14, well, immediately we don't know, right? And this is a comfort zone challenge.
168.
I think you got it. So, right, we just know, while we don't know the answer right now, we know we can come up with the answer because either we know how to do math or we know how to work a calculator, right? This is a comfort zone challenge. The next level up is called a performance zone challenge. This is a challenge that's kind of at our same level that we're currently at now, right? It's not going to be easy to take on that challenge, but we're fairly confident we could do it because we've gotten to that place before. Okay, so that's a performance zone challenge. And then there are learning zone challenges. This is when we take on a challenge that is bigger than what we've done in the past. And we really don't know how to do it, right? Because we have never been there before. And here's what I've learned, and here's what mindset research has found, is that there's different mindsets that we could talk about. And I'll imagine we'll talk about multiple different sets of mindsets as we go along. But what I'm leaning towards here is the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And so what we found is that this is a continuum, okay? And people fall somewhere along. They either have more of a fixed mindset or they have more of a growth mindset. And of course, they could be somewhere in the middle. But here's what the research has found as it relates to how they approach challenges. People with a fixed mindset, their bodies are wired to avoid failure and to avoid looking bad. And so when they encounter these challenges, they'll respond to these in unique ways. They actually love comfort zone challenges. Why? Because it's an easy way for them to validate their competence, right? They don't have the answer right now, but they know they can get it and they're willing to go through it. When it comes to performance zone challenges, it depends if it's an area of strength for them or not. If it's an area of strength, they'll push forward. If not, they tend to back away. But when it comes to a learning zone challenge, what happens is they're kind of looking up at that challenge. They're thinking, oh, I have never been up there before. That's a pretty tall place to climb. What I'm worried about, this is what their body's going to tell them. Their body's going to tell them, I'm worried that if I try to climb up there and I fall, then everybody will see me as a failure. And so what research has found is that people with a fixed mindset, they tend to avoid learning zone challenges. But that's different than people with a growth mindset. When people have a growth mindset, they actually don't like the comfort zone challenges. They're too easy. They love the performance zone challenges because they push them. But they're still in a relative place of comfort. Now, I'm not going to say people with the growth mindset love learning zone challenges, but they approach them differently than those with a fixed mindset. When people have a growth mindset, they look up there at that hill that they have to climb and they think, man, I really want to get up there. And honestly, the only way I'm going to get up there is to try to climb it. And if I don't get up there on my first attempt, that's going to suck. But every time I try to climb that, I'm going to learn something new. And eventually I will get up there. And so it's really only those with the growth mindset that are willing to take on these learning zone problems or challenges. And so, Kevin, when you tell me your story, right, that was one blip on a larger perspective, right? You try to climb that learning zone challenge and it sounds like you fell initially, but then it also sounds like, given we're having this conversation, is you went back at it, right? Knowing that the only way I'm going to get up there is if I continue to try. So it seems like, Kevin, at least then, and I'll assume now, is that you had a growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset.
I did, and I had no idea what I was doing. when I went to do it. And I had to learn all about, oh, I have to learn that, and I have to learn, oh, wow, and all that kind of, well, and I'll throw this to Rochelle, because this is also part of her challenge over the last year and a half. Because I said she was going to come work with me, and I said, I want to see if you would be good on the radio and on the show. And she was like, huh? What was your first reaction, Rochelle?
Honestly, the first thought that went through my head is, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if I can get myself to a point comfortable enough to do that. And I'm telling you, we've been doing this for so long, and I've done so many shows with Kevin that it's now not really something I think about. It's crazy to sit and think about all those different mindsets too, and how they guide you depending on why you make the decisions that you do and how hard things can seem. Because having a good mentor, somebody by your side to also help you develop these things and teach you along the way, is so important. Because if I didn't have Kevin, I really don't know, but I'm thankful for that as well. And you're spending that time with people, engaging as a human, but also as somebody who's kind of trying to lift them up a little bit and help them do things that make something that could be so complicated much, much more simple. Because working that, it's like, people go to the gym and they do this and they do that and they drink the tea and all those things, but what are we doing that's spending time focused on our brain muscle and working that, rather than avoiding it? So we'll take this
Yeah.
quick break, and then when we come back, Ryan, I'd love to hear some of your experience with people realizing that, for one, they have awareness, and for two, how they kind of their first initial reaction to starting to see themselves. I'm curious. So
Yeah, let's do it.
And we'll be right back after this. Here's another point to ponder by Positive Talk Radio. In a dark room, a single candle was lit. That tiny flame chased away the shadows, filling the space with hope. Your courage, your kindness, and your light may seem small at times, but it can change someone's entire world. Never underestimate the power you already carry inside. Even the smallest flame can ignite a fire that transforms lives. You are listening to Positive Talk Radio, where stories of hope come alive. Here's another point to ponder by Positive Talk Radio. After the longest night, the sun rose again. It painted the sky with colors no one had seen before. That's how life works. Darkness never lasts forever. No matter how long the night feels, your sunrise will come. Hold on. Light always finds its way back. You're listening to Positive Talk Radio, where stories of hope live. And welcome back to the show, everybody. Rochelle, we're talking with Ryan
Gottfredson, that's Gottfredson. Go look up his website. It's the same as his name.com. And Ryan, I was thinking about what you had asked me to, because it was hard to kind of go back to that space now that I'm here, but I hated it. I did. I didn't like it at all. I was so
You did?
nervous. I felt so uncomfortable. I felt like I couldn't keep my mind on a one straight path with thinking or asking questions. Like, I was so absorbed in the fear of doing what I was doing that I wasn't present and paying attention. So I had to ask you before the break, what it's like, what are people's initial reaction to the realization of their self-awareness, if that makes sense?
Yeah, when we start to open up the topic of mindsets, this is interesting because, again, most people think that they have really good mindsets. But I've got a mindset assessment. It's actually free on my website at ryangottfredson.com, as you mentioned. And I've had over 50,000 people take this mindset assessment. And in this assessment, we measure 4 different sets of mindsets. Right? I've told you a little bit about fixed and growth. Well, there's 3 other sets of mindsets. And what I found out of these 50,000 people who have taken this mindset assessment, only 2.5% of people are in the top quartile for all 4 sets of mindsets. So most of us, myself included, have some mindset work to do, right? And most of us have never really worked on our mindsets. So we shouldn't expect to be great when it comes to our mindsets. But again, most people think that they have really good mindsets. So if it's okay, Brichelle, let me tell you a story about a group that I worked with a couple of years ago. So this is a group, there's a lady who was a manager of a group of about 30 other kind of essentially sales reps that worked below her. And so this lady reached out to me, and she said, "Hey, I want to have you do a mindset workshop with my employees." And I said, "Okay, great. Would love to do that. And let's have them all take my mindset assessment in advance. And then I'll aggregate those results and we'll show those to the group during the workshop." And so she said, "Oh, awesome. This will be great." So it comes the day before this workshop, and I pull the data to put together this report, and I see that everybody had taken the mindset assessment except for the leader. Right. And so I had her phone number, and I texted her and I said, "Hey, I don't have your mindset results. Can you quickly take my mindset assessment?" And so she's like, "Yeah, I'll do that." So she takes the assessment, and it automatically gives you your report via email. And so shortly thereafter, I get an email from her, and this is in the evening before the workshop with this group. And I get this email from her, and she is hot. And so she's like, I don't like your assessment. I don't like these results. These don't say anything about who I am. I don't know if I'm going to be willing to be a part of this workshop. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what a train wreck. Like,
found the
and
problem.
again, this is evening. She's hot. And I just thought, let's just sleep on it, and hopefully we could come up with a resolution in the morning. So I kind of was stewing about this, having a hard time sleeping that night, thinking, oh, what are we going to do? And I wake up in the morning and I go check my email, and there's an email from her. And the email she says, "I'm sorry about my previous email. I've given it some time to think about it. And I talked with my husband. And after talking with him, I think it would be a good thing for me to be a part of the workshop today." And so that's kind of an extreme example, but there's this initial knee-jerk reaction. I didn't get results that were very favorable. And now I'm a little bit, put off by that. But with some introspection, with the help of her husband, she was able to say, maybe there's some things that I can work on here. And that was surely the case for her. I mean, good person. But one of the things that we'll find with some of the more, I'm going to say, negative mindsets or lower quality mindsets is that it represents wiring for self-protection. And that's what you had kind of mentioned earlier, Brichelle, right? I was afraid to put myself out there, right? I was afraid of, in a way, being vulnerable. And that fear is a self-protective fear and tendency that is designed to keep us safe in the short term. But if it exists or stays there, it's going to hinder our growth and development in the long term. And I love what you said, Brichelle, because this is an important thing about doing mindset work. Is you said Kevin had created a context and some mentorship that just made it easier for you, or less risky for you to step forward in the way that you were. So that's one of the importance of leaders, mentors, managers in shaping the mindsets of their employees and their people. So anyways, all that is hopefully just a fun story to demonstrate. It's not easy for people to awaken to the quality of their mindsets.
Yep.
Well, and there's also something else at play here. And that is she, as the quote unquote leader, didn't want to expose her faults or her lack of success, because she wanted to continue to have herself on that pedestal that I'm the leader and I've got 30 people and I know more than everybody. I'm great. And then she finds out she's not so great. And that is a real wake-up call. So hopefully what you did there, and after she took your course, was that she became a better leader. and was able to then say, I ain't perfect. There's only one perfect guy that ever, and he hasn't been around for 2,000 years. And so, nobody's perfect. And they were able to she was hopefully able to take that in because I'm sure her husband said, dear, this is exactly like you. And I haven't told you this, but I'm married to you, and I don't want an argument, but why don't you take that course? I think it'll do you good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and the people that she's working with, Kevin, think about how much more respect they maybe had for her, and how vulnerable they were able to be with her in their learning to go and ask for help, to realize, hey, she's human, she's learning, she's doing this all with us. I think that itself is probably what made the direct switch with her and her team before they actually even talked about results. Would you say that's fair, Ryan?
Well, it's in this case, I don't know. Like, I just don't know if she came forward in that way, or not. But I very much agree with the value that comes about when doing so, right?
Mhm.
So one of the things that I do when I work with executive teams is I have a 360 feedback tool that I use. And in that tool, there's about probably 30 different questions that I'm asking people to evaluate, their boss or their peer. And of the 30 items, there's one item that all executives score the lowest on. And the item is, this person is good at being vulnerable. It's not, and that's not a very high bar, right? This item isn't, this person is great or amazing at being vulnerable. This person is good at being vulnerable. So consistently, that is the lowest scoring item on my 360-degree assessment. And to me, that's really concerning. Now, I get why it's there, right? Because a lot of leaders feel a lot of pressure to always look good and to put their best foot forward, kind of believing that I have to, rightfully so, set the example for the people that I lead. But what we've learned is that while that makes sense, again, it's a self-protective strategy. But if leaders can be vulnerable, as you're mentioning, then there's two massive benefits to doing that. One is vulnerability is something that leads to trust. A lot of people feel like I have to trust somebody to be vulnerable, and I get that. But that's not the way the relationship primarily works. It's vulnerability leads to trust. And then the second benefit is that when people are willing to be vulnerable and they express vulnerability, it creates what is called psychological safety. And according to research, particularly a bunch of research that's been done by Google, what the research reveals is psychological safety is the number one correlate to top performing teams. And so ultimately, coming to everything that you've said, is vulnerability is a key leadership characteristic for creating an environment of trust and psychological safety. But it runs against our self-protective tendencies, which is ultimately rooted in our mindsets.
Yeah.
Ryan, is that why I found out in my management career, whenever I made a mistake or made a decision that didn't work very well, and then I owned up to it and admitted that I could have done it better, I got a real positive response from the people I was talking to. Because they felt like, well, he's not being arrogant, he's being honest, and that makes sense for us. Is that part of what we're talking about?
Well, yeah, because, and here's the fear, right? This is why people aren't willing to be vulnerable, is if I were to admit that I made a mistake, then people will lose trust and respect in me. That's the fear.
But isn't the opposite true?
That's exactly right. You're spot on. When we're actually vulnerable, it increases trust and it increases respect. But that goes contrary to our self-protective fears. And that's what's tricky about this, right? And so that's why doing the mindset work is so critical, because it helps us to reveal some of these self-protective limiting beliefs that we have that hold us back from being better leaders, better people.
And Ryan, we have a question that somebody has commented in, and this is going to take longer than we have before our halftime break because it is, my friend has a question. What are the keys to success? Oh, we could talk about that all day. And why is mindset so important? Think about those. We need to take our quick break. It's going to be a minute and 10. It's going to be 58 seconds. I made that up all by myself. I'm pretty cool, and I know math. We'll be right back. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
Are you looking for your daily dose of inspiration? Stay connected to all your favorite shows, music, and news with the Brushwood Media Network app. From Positive Talk Radio to Greatest Vibes Unplugged and so many more uplifting voices around the world, everything you need is right in one place. It's easy to use, too. Always available and designed to keep you inspired 24 hours a day. Go to BrushwoodMediaNetwork.com and download the app, and you will always have Brushwood Media available on your smartphone. Download it now and make inspiration and music and conversation part of your everyday. And welcome back. And Brachelle, our guest today is Ryan
Gottfredson. Go visit his website. It is ryangottfredson.com. And I'll let us jump straight into this question from Samuel. He says, what are some of, we'll try to keep that short because we could probably talk all day on just that, but keys to success, some of the ways that you help other people you see the most impact from, and then why it's so important.
Yeah, so I think one of the ways to think about this is, what do most people focus on to be successful? My experience is that most people focus on, what do I need to do, right? What do I need to get done to be successful? And I'm not saying that's not helpful, but I think that there's a better approach, and it's to think about, who do I need to be successful? And let me give you, if it's okay, let me share a little bit about my life story, my life journey, and the role that mindsets plays in this. Because ultimately, my answer, I'm going to come back to, what's the key to success? It's our mindsets. Because our mindsets shape how we think, learn, and behave, and therefore our success in our life, work, and leadership. Our mindsets are the most foundational aspect of everything that we do. So if we could shift our mindsets, then we will see success. So let me give you an example of this. So I grew up, my parents were a little bit older when they had me, at least here in the United States. They grew up during the tail end of the Great Depression. And their families were not very well off, which kind of spoke to kind of the upbringing that they had and their financial resources. Also, I was born in the early 80s. And right before I was born, my dad lost his first wife to a battle with cancer, and then was left with 3 teenage kids, and shortly thereafter married my mom, who had never been married and was struggling to kind of bring together this new family. And at that same time, it was the economic downturn of the early 1980s. And my dad was a consultant. He owned it as a partner in his own business, and he felt like it was too volatile. And so he left his consulting business and took a stable civic job. So he was a civil engineer, worked with a city in northern Utah. And he took this job, and it really was a dead end job. There was really no way to kind of increase in his career, in his salary throughout the remainder of his career. And so one of the things how that impacted me then growing up is, my dad was really maybe the most frugal person I ever met. And it was, one of his mentalities about money was, the way to grow wealth is to capture as much of your pie as possible. This is kind of what's called a deficit mindset. It's also called a prevention mindset. And so how he raised me is, he raised me to kind of believe that becoming an entrepreneur is bad because it will put your family at risk. also, he raised me to never go into debt because that will eat away at that pie. And so that was my mentality that I had coming into adulthood. And I graduated with a Ph.D. without having any debt, and I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. But fast forward a few years, and I was feeling stuck in my career as a professor. And I was thinking, I was into my professor job for 2 years, and I'm thinking, I don't know if I could teach the same classes over and over again for the next 30 years. That sounds kind of boring to me. And so I was feeling a little stuck, but I didn't know how to get out of it. But then I went around and I was meeting some business leaders here in Orange County, California, and I met a CEO of a business. And almost upon meeting him, and he's this great charismatic guy, he says, I've got a book that will change your life. And I'm thinking, awesome. I'm looking for a life change, and I love books. So I'm thinking, this is great. And then he hands me this book. I'll show you this book if you could see it. It's called The 5-Minute Journal. And outwardly, I'm very gracious, and I'm thinking, oh, thank you so much. I love books. This is great. But inwardly, I'm thinking, who the hell do you think I am? There is no way that I am going to journal, right? My mom was a journaler. I've got boxes of her journals. I don't want to be like my mom. Like, that's what's going in my head. So I came into my office with my book, and I went straight. Went straight to throw it in the trash. And I had this like almost spiritual epiphany where the CEO's face kind of appeared over my mind's eye. And I heard him say the words, this book will change your life. And so I like go mid from throwing it in the trash, and I reel it back in. I open it up, and I'm looking at it. It's like, oh, right at the top, if you could see, there's just an inspirational quote. And then there's 3 questions to answer in the morning. What are 3 things I'm grateful for? What are 3 things that would make today great? And then write in some self-affirmations. I was like, that doesn't seem too hard. I'm going to give this 2 weeks. And if it benefits me, I'll keep doing it. And if it doesn't benefit me, the book's going in the trash. Well, I've got it right next to me because I've been doing it every day for the last 7.5 years. So that's the impact that it's had. And here's why it's been so impactful for me. Because as I started to do this, let me say it this way. Before I started to do this, how I would wake up every day was with a prevention mindset. And my mentality was essentially, how do I get through today as easy as possible? That was my mindset. But every day, as I started to answer the question in particular, what would make today great, it started to shift my mindset from a prevention mindset to a promotion mindset. And I stopped kind of approaching my day, how do I get through today as easy as possible, to start waking up in the morning thinking, how do I make the most of today? And that started to give me a shift in my mindsets. And then after I had developed more of a promotion mindset, then I started to think bigger and dream bigger. And I decided that, I want to write a book. And I think I've got some good ideas around mindsets to write this book. And so I started to look into, how do you go about publishing a book? Well, one of the first things I learned is you really don't make a lot of money from writing and publishing books. But you can make a decent amount of money from the consulting on the back end of writing those books. And so what I learned was, if I want to be successful as an author, I need to start my own business. Effectively, I need to be an entrepreneur. And guess what? To start my business, I'm going to have to take on some debt to get there. So because I had now shifted from a prevention mindset to a promotion mindset, those 2 things, becoming an entrepreneur and going into debt, now seem like the right decision as opposed to something that was bad and that was holding me back. And the only way that I would be willing to kind of engage in those behaviors was if I was to first shift my mindsets. So I honestly, I credit this book, The 5-Minute Journal, to being a mindset development tool that drastically altered the trajectory of my life because it helped me shift my mindsets. And I started to think differently. I started to learn differently, and I started to do differently. And because of that, I saw greater levels of success across my life, my work, and my leadership. So hopefully that's a helpful example.
That's a great story. That's a really cool story because mindset really, at the end of the day, mindset is everything. Because, and I have a quick story. Can I tell you a quick story?
Let's do it, Kevin. Mine was a long one. Sorry for going on such a rant there.
Well, no, this is okay. I was in the restaurant business, and I started as a graveyard dishwasher, and I moved up and became, and I opened restaurants. I was an assistant manager, and then I became the manager of a hotel dining room. And after I'd been the captain and all that kind of good stuff, and then I went to work somewhere else, and I became the general manager of a place called Sea Galley. And they're no longer there. Maybe that's why they made me a general manager. Anyway. And then I left there and went to another place and was being introduced to this new restaurant. It was a Mexican restaurant. It was called Garcia's, and one of the assistant managers was standing next to me, and I said, "So, what's it like being here? What's it like working here?" And he said, "Well, as long as you want to be an assistant manager, you're going to be fine." And I said, what do you mean? Because every assistant manager's goal is to be the boss, is to have become the general manager. And he said, "Well, there are 4 restaurants in the group here, and there are 12 assistant managers, and you're number 12, and so there are only 4 positions. It's going to take forever for you to become a general manager, and stuff." And without even asking me what my skills were or where I came from, and so rather than saying, "Oh, dang, I'm just going to be an assistant manager and I'll just do my time," I became an innovator. I became known for the things that I brought from my various experiences that made the operation run better. The district manager noticed, and when the next opening came up, guess who got the job? And the guy who told me that said that he ended up working for me as my assistant manager when I was the general manager, because of my mindset was, screw that, I'm going to be the next guy. And because I was, and not because of hocus pocus, it was hard work and stuff. But that's kind of what you're talking about, isn't it? Is you have to believe in yourself in order to make it work for you. That's a different way of saying it, I guess.
No, for sure. And here's a thing that I'm getting a sense of when you tell your story. And this is actually something that's critical as we think about this prevention to promotion mindset continuum, is that in order for somebody to have a promotion mindset, there's really 2 necessary ingredients. They need to have a clear destination about where they're going, and they need a why for getting there. And if we don't have those 2 ingredients, naturally, we're just going to be prevention minded and just try to survive. But it's when we have a clear goal and a why for getting there that now we start to operate in creator mode as opposed to reactor mode. And so, Kevin, when you say I was an innovator, that's a sign that you are in creator mode and not in reactive mode, right? I imagine that assistant manager was kind of more about avoiding problems as opposed to innovating. And that is what made the difference for you and how you set yourself apart from others. And that's the power of having that promotion mindset.
Well, and go ahead, Rochelle.
Yeah, I just wanted to say too, because Kevin's goal had to, and Samuel says, "Well noted. Thanks for sharpening us. God bless you." You're welcome, Samuel. Thank you for asking a question. Ryan is so good at explaining things. But as Kevin was saying too, do you work with people to maybe bring it to their awareness that your goals and your boundaries and those kind of things have to shape and shift and change, and that's okay, depending on you getting every step further, because then they either reach the goal and then, okay, now what? Or it's, they're doing good, and something happens and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to take a step back," and they lose track and they go back into that old mindset, instead of reevaluating and say, okay, maybe some things need to change again. And there is nothing wrong with that. So I'll let us take this break and let you think about that. But I have to know.
And Ryan, and just real quick, was your dad, when you became an entrepreneur and took on debt, was your dad still with us?
He wasn't. Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see how, he would have reacted to some of that. Yeah.
It would have been interesting,
Yeah.
but I gotta believe that if your mindset is strong enough, that you would have done it. You would have said, "Thanks, Dad," and you would have done it anyway.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's what I've learned, right? To operate at a higher level than what you have operated before, you're going to have to push back, to your point, against your own fears, but also against the expectations that others have for you. And that's both of those things are a challenging part of elevating ourselves for sure.
And a lot of people would say, "Oh, I was just trying to save him from hurting himself," and and so go big or go home is not a motto that a lot of people have. It's like, I get to be small. I'm just going to stay in my little cubbyhole. We'll be right back. Ryan Gottfredson is our guest, and go to ryangottfredson.com. And I said it, Purcell. Aren't you proud of me?
I'm so surprised. Go you. I knew you could.
And we will be right back right after this. This is about leadership, and I think it's really good. Ryan, I'd love your opinion on it. Here are some points to ponder from Positive Talk Radio. You know, some say leadership is about getting the work done, about pushing forward, no matter the cost. But what's the cost of a team with no purpose? What if a single act of support, a single moment of genuine grit could change everything? What if leadership was a catalyst? Because true leadership isn't about being in control. It's about empowering others to find their purpose. It's about leading with passion and igniting the fire in everyone around you, creating a culture of teamwork and common purpose. A true leader finds this culture by enthusiastic purpose and team development, making each team member feel empowered to create, improve, and execute their tasks with genuine passion and a strong belief in the company's mission and focus. In other words, lead with purpose. And welcome back. Michelle is right here, and ask your question again. But first, Ryan, I got to ask you, did that leadership deal make any sense at all to you?
Which part of it?
Oh,
the purpose part that we just watched?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, for sure. 100%. Yes.
Okay. Whew. I was worried about that there because you know what you're talking about. And I like to think anyway. Michelle, go ahead.
Yes. Okay, Ryan, do you remember my question? Because I don't think I've ever forgot it before. My mind went down another rail track. Oh, the biggest things when you see somebody that hits that, they keep getting stuck, and then they go back and they go back and they go back and they keep trying and trying and trying, and then there's that point that it's like you have to break past that. How do you help them come to terms with being able to kind of change the trajectory of where they started and where they're at and where they need to go?
Yeah, what I've learned is that if people keep hitting a wall, if they're feeling stuck, if they've hit a plateau, if they're stuck in a rut, ultimately the reason why is because there are some self-protective fears that are driven by some self-protective mindsets. And they haven't yet awakened to that or figured out a way to work through it. So let me give you an example. Here's a lady that I coached. Actually, this lady's manager reached out to me and said, "Hey, I've got a lady who I've been working with for 10 years. And honestly, she's good, but she's in a place where we either need to move her up in the organization or we need to move her out of the organization." And he's like, we're kind of at a hinge point with her. And could you do some coaching? I mean, ultimately, I don't want to let her go, but we need to see some changes from her. And I was like, oh, sure. I'd be happy to give it a shot. And so he connected us via email, and this lady kind of sent me an email saying, "Hey, I'm looking forward to doing some coaching with you." And then at the bottom of her email, she had a whole bunch of letters after her last name, right? Different degrees she has. And she had a bunch of stickers representing different professional certificates that she had received. And I remember getting this email thinking, why does she need coaching? All right. She's clearly a very qualified person. But I was like, I'll take this on. So we get on a call, and I just said, "Tell me about your story." And she said, I've been in this position for the last 10 years. And every year after I get passed up for promotion, I go out and I get a new degree and a new certificate. And I still haven't gotten promoted. I don't know what's going on. And I can tell she's incredibly frustrated. She's feeling stuck, right? She's been investing in herself, but she's not seeing any results from that. And I said, okay, well, let's dive into this. And what I recognized that was going on very early is that she was trying to improve her knowledge and her skills. And she thought that that was enough to help her get unstuck. But just by getting new degrees, new certificates, improving our knowledge and skills, that doesn't necessarily improve our mindsets. So while she was a smarter person and a more skillful person, she still had some of these self-protective mindsets. And so I walked her through a coaching exercise to awaken to her fears and her self-protective mindsets. And what we learned through this process is that while she is great at taking directions and fulfilling those directions, she had a big fear about taking initiative herself. And why did she have this fear? What we actually uncovered was because she was a single mom and she was afraid that if she took initiative and something went sideways, she would lose her job and wouldn't be able to support her child. And that's huge, right? That's a big fear. And what I was able to do is I was able to help her realize this was a fear that was holding her back. But it's a fear that she's got to uncover or overcome in order for her to be the person to get promoted. In order for them to promote her, they need to know that she could take initiative on her own without taking direction. And so I walked her through a process of actually taking small steps initially to take some initiative, as well as working on her mindsets. And by doing that simultaneously, we were able to help her to kind of rise above her limiting fears and mental blocks, and ultimately these self-protective mindsets. So the reality is that if we're feeling stuck, there's a fear that's there, that's at the crux of it. And if we ultimately want to get unstuck, we've got to shed some light on that fear and work through it. And so, in fact, I'll just offer this up. If you're listening to this and this is interesting to you, let me invite you to go to my website at ryangottfredson.com, take my mindset assessment. If you take that assessment, let me know, send me your results, and I'll be happy to jump on a phone call to walk you through your results if you want to kind of uncover the fear that might be going on for you.
You know, the interesting thing about our life experience is that we don't know what we don't know. And oftentimes we're not going to ever find that out until we have somebody who is outside of our friends and family, because they don't want to hurt our feelings, that can be real and can open your mind to some thoughts and some things that you may have never considered. Because, and as an example, you made the step of becoming an entrepreneur and taking on debt, which would have been against what your dad's wishes were, but you did it anyway. Isn't that how success happens? Is you get told that you can't do this and you can't do that, and then you do it anyway because in your heart, that's what you feel positively motivated to be able to do. Am I even close? But that's why a coach is so important.
Yeah, well, I mean, the word that comes to mind as you say that is courage. To me, that's exactly what courage is. Courage is choosing to go with our value-creating values, beliefs, purpose, and ideals at the risk of potentially putting ourselves in danger. Right? There's a reason why we look up to superheroes, why we love superhero movies, is because they are the types of people that are willing to put their own interests on the back burner to create value for others. And ultimately, I believe that's what courage is. And while surely I could be a more courageous person, I do believe there's an element about my story where I had to make that courageous choice to go against what I was raised to believe and how to see the world and adopt something different. And to me, that's where magic happens, is when we're willing to take that courageous step of, and we could use Brichelle as an example. She at least, put her face out there, got on some of these interviews to begin with. It didn't feel comfortable, but that's a courageous step forward. She's pushing against what her body wants her to do, those self-protective kind of desires, in order for a brighter future, in order to contribute more to the world. And so that's why I, coming back to Kevin, to that segment that we had during the break about purpose. That's why purpose is so important, is because we can only be courageous when we've got a purpose to create value for something bigger than ourselves.
And to highlight that point, Ryan, Rochelle started doing the shows. Now, this was a radio show. She had no idea the reach. She had no idea who would be listening, but her face was out there. And her face looks really good being out there, by the way. I just thought I'd throw that in. And but when people started recognizing her in her everyday life, when she went to a place and somebody said, "Is that you? Rochelle, is that really you?" And she had to make a courageous decision at that point. There could have been a moment in time where she said, "Oh crap, people are actually watching this. Oh no." But she didn't. And that's the courageousness that she has within her that told me that she could do this. But there are people that would say, I ain't doing that anymore. I don't want people to recognize me. What if they don't like me? What if they don't like what I said? What if they, you know what I mean? So that courage is a huge part of what we do to be successful, I believe.
Yeah. Well, when you have the courage to learn too, that you can't go back. When you learn something, you can't go back. So it's there. And I think that's where it hit me, Ryan. I just kept learning and learning and learning. And I had to be courageous enough to be willing to learn those things, but it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. I think everyone is just like, this is going to be so hard. And yeah, you know what? Sometimes time feels like it's dragging, but when you look back, you're like, wow, that actually worked and it's happening fast. Do you have that experience with the people you work with that tell you that?
All the time. I think that there's a truth nugget in what you're saying, which is our self-protective fears feel bigger than what they ever are.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a bumper sticker.
Exactly that.
Say that again, Ryan.
Maybe there's a better way to even articulate that. But our self-protective fears are always bigger than they appear, or what we sense that they appear like.
And they're not anywhere near the cataclysmic thing that we tend to think of them as. But and I gotta tell you, dang it, we're gonna have to invite you back. We've run out of time again. Rochelle, help me.
Yes. Well, thank you for joining us in, Ryan. Everybody who's listening to this conversation, I love having you on the show every time. We could talk nonstop. And yes, please do come back. For anybody listening, go visit his website, take this quiz, and get the opportunity to talk with Ryan and just learn a little bit more about yourself. I mean, when you realize that it's not going to kill you, then it makes it a little easier. And Samuel says, from my team, is mindset a skill and mindset mean attitude? What book can help change your mindset? And I would highly recommend you, Samuel, to go back and watch that, because we talked about a few of those things if you missed out on that. But it's up and available anywhere. For anybody who joined in late, go listen to the rest of it. Go to his website, which is ryangodfred.com. And yeah, thank you again, Ryan, just for your time and your wisdom and your courage to be able to help people find theirs as well.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, on my website, there's that mindset assessment. And then I've got my newest book that just came out. It's called Becoming Better. So Samuel, if you want access to this, we can get you ebook or audiobook pretty easy. Just reach out to me, let me know, and we could get it to you. But I hopefully would be a great place for you to dig into. If you like this stuff, sink your teeth into the book and you'll get a lot more depth in what you're looking for.
Hold the book up again.
There we go. Becoming Better.
Becoming Better. And underneath that, the subtitle.
The Groundbreaking Science of Personal Transformation.
Beautiful.
Okay, everybody, go get that book. It's at Amazon and everywhere else,
Yeah.
I would imagine. Becoming Better. And Ryan, you are a great guest, and I want to thank you so much for being here. Dang it,
Well,
we've run out of time again.
Yeah, thanks for being a great host. I was thinking, thanks for being so positive, as you should. Like I'm coming off of this and my cheeks are hurting because I've been smiling so much. And that just doesn't happen. So thank you.
Happens to her all the time.
It does. And I've gotten used to it and I love it and I can't wait for more. So please do come back. We have so much more to talk about.
All right.
Thank you, Ryan. And go to his website again, ryangottfredson.com, and find out all about it. Take the assessment. 50,000 people can't be wrong. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being part of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, where stories inspire and voices remind us of what truly matters. May today's conversation give you hope, courage, and a reason to keep moving forward. And just remember, till next time, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got.